I have to say that last week, when I advocated that America drop some bunker buster bombs on the Iranian nuclear sites embedded in the mountain, I didn't know just how impactful those words would be. Is it possible that we have some listeners in D.C., some policymakers in places of power like to listen to the Parsha podcast? I wasn't sure last week if we should talk about some advocacy on the podcast. What difference does it make? But now it's hard to argue that our advocacy did not have an impact. After all, look at the results. But in all seriousness, it seems like the menace, the sword of Damocles of the Iranian nuclear project is no more. For the past 20 years, we've been hearing about Iran being on the nuclear threshold, and that is no more. I know this morning we're speaking, of course, Tuesday evening, torchzoom.com, 8 p.m. Central. We heard some reports today. Well, maybe they didn't destroy it all, just some damage. They just pushed it back a few months. I'm not believing any of that. Please God, peace will reign in the Middle East and in the Holy Land. And please God, good times are ahead. Please God, the hostages will finally be returned and all of the threats to our people and to our land are neutralized. Now I know, we all know, that the Iranian nuclear project was not only a threat to their neighbors and to Israel, but really to the whole world. This regime is not one that inspires confidence, the knowledge that they would have these terrible, awful weapons. And the regime has done all manner of harm to lots of places, including the United States. So some may say, well, this is America's strike because this is what America wanted to do. I think that's partially true, but I think it's important for us as Jews and as committed supporters of the Jewish state to thank the president and the administration for what they did. All the other administrations, all the other presidents didn't do it. And our people, we have a very long memory, and we appreciate for a very long time the good things done to us. Even today. What is it, 2025? How long ago did Alexander the Great march into Jerusalem? 2,500 years ago? And until today, we still have a very fond view of Alexander the Great. Why? He did conquer Judea, after all. We appreciate him because he did so peacefully, bloodlessly, and he didn't destroy Jewish life there. And after he did that, the sages instituted a rule for the next year following the Greek conquest of Judea. All boys are to be named Alexander. That's the sign of appreciation that was instituted. And even today, the name Alexander or Sender is still a common Jewish name. It's been, 2,500 years? We have a long memory. In the book of Ezra, we recount Cyrus the Great and his decision to allow the Jews to go back to the Holy Land. That's a long time ago. We look back fondly on Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, the great Roman emperor who was friendly to the Jews and under whose rule the Mishnah was codified. We don't forget the leaders of the nations who did good to our people. We don't forget Harry Truman, who recognized the state of Israel only 11 minutes after it was declared. We don't forget President Kennedy. He was the first to really begin supplying Israel with arms. We don't forget the much maligned President Nixon during the Yom Kippur War. He said that anything that could fly should be supplied to the Jewish state in their time of need. And we're not going to forget the good things that President Trump did for our people. And I know that politics are divisive, and we don't talk about politics here on the Parsha podcast. And I've heard rumors, reliable rumors, that some people have very strong feelings about our current president. That said, not now and not in 100 years or 1,000 years from now, we're not going to forget his recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, his recognition of the Golan Heights as being Israeli, his orchestration of the Abraham Accords, and his decision to get materially involved in a struggle, in a war against a nation that was committed to the destruction of Israel. Now, we don't know how things are going to go from here, and we don't know if the ceasefire that was announced today will hold, and we don't know how much of this project, of this program, was actually destroyed. There are a lot of unanswered questions, but we will forever remember the good that was done to us. And again, it wasn't just done for us. It's good for America, it's good for the world, but it's also good for us, and we will remember that for a very long time. I did speak to someone in our neighborhood, and he said, well, if the Jews named their sons Alexander, this is what he said, if I'm blessed with a son, I'm naming him Donald J. I don't know if that's absolutely necessary. I don't know, maybe that's not so advisable to get such an overt, highly political, controversial name to your son. But it did remind me when my son Yehoshua was born. So he was born a few weeks after we had expected him to come, a few weeks past the due date. And I remember saying, if he's actually born on July 4th, I actually threatened my wife. It was a joke, but I threatened her. We should name him Thomas Jefferson Walby. She's, after all, Canadian, even though she's a dual citizenship. She had dual citizenship. She's American as well. Now, thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. It's a nice sentiment, but certainly the general idea that we must show appreciation for the good that was done for us, that is in order. In the aftermath, is it going to be called the 12-Day War? Who knows? But in the aftermath of this war against Iran and the strike against their hopefully permanently destroyed and permanently filed away nuclear ambition, it's Parsha's Korach. Korach was Moshe's first cousin. Their fathers were brothers, and he launches a rebellion, an insurrection against Moshe and against Aaron. He's envious. He's envious of Moshe. He's envious of Aaron. He's envious of the position that he thought was rightfully his, the position given instead to a third cousin, Elitzaphan ben Uziel. And he rebels. And he finds followers sympathetic to his cause. With him are 250 unnamed men of note, and 3 Reubenites, Dathan and Abiram, Dathan and Abiram, and On Ben Peles, On son of Peles. And they rile up the people against Moshe and against Aaron, and they say, you're no better than us. The entire congregation is holy. Why do you lord over the congregation of God? You're illegitimate, Korach and his chums tell Moshe and Aaron. And Moshe invites them to have God settle this question. Everyone bring some ketores, everyone bring some incense, and let's see who God chooses. Now this was a threat. Recall the last person who brought an unauthorized offering of incense. That was Aaron's 2 sons, Nadav and Avihu, and they died. So Moshe is warning them, do you want to proceed with your plans? For a variety of reasons, Korach persisted. There was a showdown, and it ended very poorly for all the conspirators. Some were swallowed up in a sinkhole. Some were consumed by a divine fire. Some died in a plague. The shovels of those 250 would-be high priests were made into a sheathing of the altar. Everyone must remember this story. Everyone must remember the time where people rose up against Moshe and against Aaron. Moshe demonstrates Aaron's supremacy and legitimacy as the priest with a staffathon. Every tribe contributes a staff. They place it in the tabernacle. In the morning, Aaron's staff has blossomed. It bloomed. And the Parsha ends with the delineation of the special privileges and rights given to the priests, given to the Kohanim, given rightfully to Aaron and his sons. I want to focus on the role that Reuben's descendants, the 3 Reubenites, played in the rebellion. The first verse of our Parsha, it tells us that there were some people that began a mutiny. Korach, he's the ringleader, of course. And there are 3 other named people. Dathan and Abiram, brothers, son of Eliav. On, son of Peles, from the tribe of Reuben. So we have 250 unnamed men of note, 3 Reubenites, plus Korach. There are 252 Rebs. Dathan and Abiram, of the 3 Reubenites, they are swallowed up in the sinkhole. On Ben Peles, he survives, as we shall see. Now, very interesting. Way back in Genesis, we found hints to all 3 of the rogue Reubenites in Reuben's story. You recall, perhaps, Joseph was sold as a slave. He ended up in Egypt. He became the king. You remember that story. There was a famine. The brothers came before their brother. They don't even recognize him, that he's actually their brother. He plays all these games with them. He takes Shimon as a hostage. He demands to see Benjamin. He sends them back home. Absent Shimon, he puts their money back in their satchels. And Jacob refuses to part with Benjamin. And Reuben, the verse tells us, this is chapter 42, verse 37. Reuben says, I volunteer my 2 sons. Give me custodianship of Benjamin. And if he doesn't come back, you kill my 2 sons. Now, those are words that you never say. You never say, kill my 2 sons, even if it's a condition. Don't let bad things come out of your mouth. I say, just tell us. Because Reuben volunteered his 2 sons to die, 2 of his sons died. Not his sons, his grandsons, his descendants. Dathan and Abiram, Dathan and Abiram, they died as a result of Reuben's inappropriate words to say, my 2 sons will die. And the commentaries observe, where he says, Es Shnei Banai, my 2 sons, the gematria of Es Shnei is Dathan and Abiram. It's the same gematria. So we see, again, Reuben has his descendants playing a role in our Parsha in the book of Numbers, and the 2 that died are present, or hinted to at least, alluded to in Reuben's story. Now, one of them, as we shall see, survived. On Ben Peles, known to his friends as OBP, of course. The Midrash tells us something fascinating. At the end of Jacob's life, on his deathbed, he gathers all of his sons and gives them all blessings. And to Reuben, he starts off and he says, Reuben, you are my firstborn. Kochi veracious oni, my strength and my initial vigor. The Hebrew word for vigor is on, the same word as Reuben's descendant, On Ben Peles, OBP. And the Midrash tells us that there's some sort of veiled reference, there's a hint, there's an allusion in the blessing Jacob dispensed to Reuben. There's a hint to Reuben's descendant, On Ben Peles. So the 3 Reubenites in our Parsha are connected to their progenitor, Reuben. Now, Dathan and Abiram, they don't appear many times in Scripture. They primarily appear here, where they join the rebellion and Moshe reaches out to them. In verse 12 of our Parsha, Moshe calls Dathan and Abiram, and they say, we're not going to come. You took us out of a land flowing with milk and honey. Egypt was flowing with milk and honey. And you're going to rule over us. You're going to lord over us. You're going to gouge out our eyes. And they defiantly remain in opposition to Moshe, and they're swallowed up, them and their families. Now, the Midrash and the Talmud, they give us a little bit of a peek behind the curtains to show us more about these two rabble-rousers. Basically, anytime you find anonymous malcontents in the story of the Exodus, our sages tell us that they're actually Dathan and Abiram. You recall, perhaps, Exodus chapter 2. Moshe, he's maturing, and the prince of Egypt goes out to inspect on the well-being of his brethren, and he sees an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man. And he looks to the right, to the left. There's no one there. He kills the Egyptian and buries him in the sand. And then, on the next day, he sees two Israelites, fighting. And he tells the wicked one, why do you strike your fellow? Who are these two fighters? So Rashi tells us. Dathan and Abiram. Wicked one, why do you strike your fellow? They're both wicked. Now, they tell Pharaoh about Moshe's crime, so to speak, of killing the Egyptian of the previous day. They snitch on Moshe, and that ultimately forces Moshe to flee. That's all Dathan and Abiram. Moshe ends up in exile because of them. And they appear once more. Moshe, after the burning bush episode, he's sent down to Egypt, and his first attempt to earn the nation's freedom backfires. Instead of lightening their load, instead of freeing the nation, Pharaoh exacerbates their misery. He doesn't give them the ingredients for bricks, but the quota is maintained. And at the end of Parshas Shmos, the Jewish foremen, they meet Pharaoh, and they have an audience. This is chapter 5, verses 15 through 18 of Exodus. And then, when they leave, they meet Moshe. The Jewish foremen, after meeting Pharaoh, they meet Moshe and Aaron. And some of them tear into Moshe and Aaron. You made us loathsome to Pharaoh. You put a sword in their hand to slay us. They start cursing Moshe and Aaron. Who's this? Dathan and Abiram. According to the Targum Yonasan, when the nation left Egypt, some Jews remained behind, including Dathan and Abiram. And when Pharaoh, chapter 14, verse 3, when he's talking to or regarding the Israelites, and he's saying that they're confused and they're trapped, according to the Targum Yonasan, he's speaking to Dathan and Abiram. They're still there in Egypt with him. And they apparently rejoin the nation at a later date. And our sages tell us that when the nation was surrounded by Pharaoh, and some Jews said, are there insufficient graves in Egypt? He brought us here to die. That's Dathan and Abiram. They do the sins with the manna. They leave some manna over for the next day. They go out on Shabbos to collect it. In last week's Parsha, Parshas Shlach, after the devastating report of the spies, someone made a suggestion to return to Egypt. Who is this someone? That's Dathan and Abiram. And in our Parsha, they call the land of Egypt the land flowing with milk and honey. So these people have a very long rap sheet. And according to the Kabbalistic literature, they were unrepentant to the very end, and that's why they were swallowed up alive. Moreover, every single rabble-rouser in all of Jewish history is actually a reincarnation of these two brothers. These people represent the malcontents throughout our history. And they die, but they're going to make a reappearance in every generation. Those are two of the three Reubenites in our Parsha. What about the other Reubenite, On Ben Peles? So the Talmud tells us in the book of Sanhedrin 109b, his wife saved him. He's all involved in this dispute. Korach is right. Moshe and Aaron are illegitimate. They're frauds. I'm joining this cause. And his wife sobered him up. And she said, well, what difference does it make to you? If Korach is the king, you're still a layperson. If Moshe is the king, you're a layperson. You have nothing to gain. How do you benefit from this dispute? Just opt out of it. That's what she advised. But On said, I can't do that. I promised to join. Tomorrow when they have the incense offering, I said I'll be there. I swore a pact to this cause. So she said, I'll solve this problem for you. You sit down. She gave him wine to drink, and he became drunk. And he went to sleep in the bed, in the tent. And she was sitting by the entrance of the tent. And she took off her hair covering. And when all the people are waiting around, where's On, where's On, where's On? Anyone who walked into the tent said, oh my goodness, this woman is not dressed modestly. They quickly turned heel and left. And by the time On woke up from his stupor, the rebellion was over. Now, when the Talmud brings this story, it compares it to the behavior of Korach's wife. She was the opposite. She goaded him to rebel. And it gives a whole long list of the many different ways that she caused his downfall. And the Talmud concludes, the verse in Proverbs says, Chachmas nashim bansa beisa, the wisdom of women built her house. That's a reference to the wife of On Ben Peles. But the folly of some women destroy her house with her own hands. That's a description of Korach's wife. So On Ben Peles, he's a Reubenite, like Dathan and Abiram, but he survives thanks to the maneuvering of his wife. Now, he's mentioned only once in the Torah, only in the first verse of our Parsha. And as you mentioned earlier, the Midrash finds an allusion to him in the blessing of Jacob to Reuben. The first thing he tells Reuben, you are my firstborn. You are my strength and my initial vigor, kochi, my strength. Voracious Oni, and the first of my vigor. Oni, that's a reference to On Ben Peles. If we want to understand what the lesson of On is, it's important to look at the blessing that Jacob gave to Reuben. If you read chapter 49 of Genesis, you read the blessings that Jacob gave to his sons. And Reuben's blessing doesn't seem to be a blessing at all. Reuben, you're my firstborn, my strength and my initial victor. Sounds great. You were destined to be the king. You were destined to be the priest, firstborn after all. But when you rearranged your father's bed and you acted with water-like impetuosity, you lost the monarchy. You lost the priesthood. After the death of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel, Jacob established his permanent sleeping bed in the tent of her maidservant, Bilhah. And Reuben thought that was an affront to his mother, Leah. She was a primary wife, after all. So he dragged Jacob's bed to his mother Leah's tent. And for him to get involved in the conjugal life of Jacob is indefensible. And that, Jacob tells him, was a product of water-like impetuosity. And as a result of that, he lost the monarchy and the priesthood. That's the content of Reuben's blessing. Now, there's a major problem, because I know what a blessing is. I know what it is when I see it. This ain't no blessing. A blessing is something which is good, which is desirable. Reuben is told, this is your flaw. You're impulsive. You're impetuous. You run like water. And therefore, you won't be king. You won't be a priest. How is that a blessing? Moreover, at the end of that section in Genesis 49, the verse concludes, Vayevarech Osam, Jacob blessed his sons, Ish asher kirvchaso berach Osam. Each person, as per their blessing, he blessed them. This implies that each blessing was a double blessing. He blessed them. Each as per his blessing, he blessed them. Each received a double blessing. Reuben's blessing doesn't sound like it's even one blessing. So my grandfather, of blessed memory, used to explain a very powerful idea. Jacob indeed gave a fantastic double blessing to Reuben. How so? We're here to accomplish things, to improve things, to fix things, to refine ourselves, to elevate ourselves, to take all of our flaws and shortcomings and fix them. By default, all humans, we have flaws, we have shortcomings. And part of the reason why we're here, part of the objectives of life, is to overcome them, is to elevate ourselves above them. We can change. Angels can't change. They're stationary. We are dynamic. We can change. We can refine ourselves. We can become greater, more refined people. But to do that, you have to know your flaws. You have to identify, what are my shortcomings? What are my negative predispositions, negative inclinations? And our studies tell us that every flaw is different. There's 3 different levels of flaws. Some flaws, you can fix them very easily. It's a bad habit, but you could kick it. A little bit of work. A small bit of effort, you could fix it. Level 2 are more entrenched flaws. You could fix it. It's theoretically fixable, but you got to work really, really hard. You have to be determined, and you have to be consistent, and you have to be maniacal about it. It could be done very hard. And then there's the third category of flaws. The third category are the flaws that are so hardwired, it's part of your essence, and it's completely and utterly unchangeable. It's who you are. It's wired into your essence. to uproot and to change and to fix a category 3 flaw is impossible. If someone is serious about trying to improve themselves and trying to rectify themselves, refine themselves, they must know their shortcomings. They must develop a catalog of all their flaws. And not only that, to know which ones are category 1 flaws, easy to fix, relatively. Category 2, hard to fix, but fixable. And what are the category 3 flaws that cannot be fixed and must be overcome via other means? Jacob gave 2 blessings to Reuben. The first blessing was the diagnosis of his category 3 flaw. Reuben, you are impulsive, impetuous like water. You are prone to act rashly without considering the ramifications, the consequences of your behavior. You're like water, doesn't stop, doesn't pause, just flows. Reuben acted in a manner similar to running water, without considering all the implications, all the different variables, all the consequences. That's the first blessing. Jacob is prophetically revealing to Reuben what is his unchangeable flaw, and that is that he flows like water. And then Reuben got a second blessing, the loss of the monarchy and the priesthood. If your impulsivity cannot be changed, you have to work around it. And Jacob designed Reuben's life to avoid situations, environments where his impetuosity would prove deadly. An impetuous king is a disaster waiting to happen. An impetuous priest could destroy all the service in the temple. So the second blessing is the blessing of the loss of the monarchy and the priesthood. After blessing 1, the diagnosis, blessing 2 is the losing of the monarchy and the priesthood, where Jacob withdrew him from atmospheres, from situations that were not suitable to someone with his character makeup. For Reuben, for water-like impetuous Reuben, it's a blessing to be a layman. That will ensure that he won't constantly be blundering into the unchangeable category 3 weakness of his water-like impetuosity. This is the character of Reuben. And 3 of them in our Parsha, Dathan, Abiram, and On Ben Peles, exhibited the gene of Reuben. What did On's wife tell him? If Moshe is the king, you're not a person of note. If Korach's the king, you're also not a person of note. What do you have to gain from joining the rebellion? What difference does it make if Moshe's king, if Korach's king? Either way, you're just a commoner. Now, On, he found this logic persuasive. But I already pledged to join. It's okay. Drink some wine. I'll take off my hair covering. Indeed, it worked. But what was On thinking? To begin with, there's a logic gap in On's thinking. On's thinking is cloudy. If he had nothing to gain by joining the rebellion, as his wife astutely pointed out, what motivated him to join it in the first place? Now, the same question could be asked about Dathan and Abiram. They also had nothing to gain by joining the Korach rebellion. Why did these Reubenites rebel? What was in it for them? We know the answer. These 3 Reubenites manifested the flaw of Reuben. Just as Reuben acted before he thought through things, before he figured out all the consequences, He was impulsive, running like water. That flaw was bequeathed to his descendants. Dathan, Reubenite, Abiram, Reubenite, On Reubenite. They joined the rebellion with water-like impulsivity. They were not deliberative, calculated, circumspect. Let's weigh the decision carefully. Their thinking was cloudy. As descendants of Reuben, they rushed like water. They failed to think before acting. The Reuben gene was operating within them. But On had a wife, and his wife saved him. How did she save him? She saved him exactly how Jacob prescribed the workaround for Reuben. She didn't fix his impulsive nature. She found a way to sidestep it, to avoid it, a circuitous way to not have it cause damage. She channeled Jacob's second blessing by finding a way to work around it. His Reubenite tendencies are unchangeable, but that does not condemn him to die. Her behavior is a textbook fulfillment of Jacob's blessings. Did Reuben and his descendants fulfill the blessing of Jacob? Well, Dathan and Abiram did not. Their impulsivity led to their death. But On Ben Peles, thanks to his wife, he adhered to Jacob's blessings. He did so faithfully, and he survived. Now, it's interesting, our sages tell us that there's a second set of blessings given to these tribes. At the end of the Torah, Moshe blesses the tribes, the same tribes that Jacob blessed when they were just individuals. At the end of Genesis, those same tribes, Moshe blessed at the end of his life. And the Midrash says that there's a connection between Jacob's blessing and Moshe's blessing to every respective tribe. Where Jacob's blessing ended, Moshe's blessing began. What does Moshe say about Reuben? It's related, our sages tell us, to what Jacob said about Reuben. Moshe says, Yechi Reuven ve'al yamos. Let Reuven live and let him not die. We have 3 Reubenites that should have been aware of the blessing given to the tribe of Reuben. Some listened, some didn't. And Moshe is observing, let Reuven live. Learn from the example of On Ben Peles and live. And not die like Dathan and Abiram. Jacob's blessing was only partially fulfilled by the Reubenites. And Moshe is reinforcing Jacob's blessing, urging the tribe, you have this flaw, you have this characteristic, it's built in, it's unchangeable. Live, don't die. Live like On Ben Peles, and don't die like Dathan and Abiram. I think On's story and his wife's very powerful intervention is a valuable lesson for us. By dint of our humanity, we all bear flaws. I'm sorry to say it. Forgive me for being the bearer of bad news. Don't shoot the messenger. You, my friend, you have flaws. You're not perfect. I know this is not how therapy is done today, right? Everyone's perfect. No! Only angels who are stationary to be perfect. Even angels are not perfect. Only God's perfect, of course. But humans, the whole reason why we're here is to overcome, is to be dynamic. And to be given the opportunity, the blessing, to be able to become greater than we start off as. We have flaws. And there's a lot of study needed, examination needed, introspection needed to know exactly what our flaws are. And even once we know our flaws, they could be ranked category 1, which are easily relatively changeable. Category 2, changeable with great effort. And category 3, and it seems likely from the sources there's only one. You don't have more than one category 3 flaw. Category 3 flaws are unchangeable. And to identify our flaws, it's important because that's the first step in devising a plan to overcome them. Now, of course, it's also important to know our strengths, our qualities. Because if you don't know your qualities, you don't know what tools you have to work with. But discovering our flaws is wonderful. It's a blessing because it constitutes our marching orders. Now, it's not pleasant to dwell on your flaws and shortcomings. No one wants to think about that. It bothers us that we have those shortcomings. But that knowledge, it's a blessing. It's indispensable. Because if you are ignorant of your flaws, your life mission, or at least part of it, part of your life mission that is to fix your flaws, is imperiled. And certainly if we don't know what our category 3 flaw is, we're liable to choose a life path incompatible with our essence. Once someone is aware of their unchangeable category 3 flaw, then they could have the second blessing, the life design blessing, to know how to live, how to flourish, notwithstanding your unchangeable flaw. Jacob gave Reuben a double blessing. Number 1, a diagnosis of his unchangeable flaw. Number 2, instructions for how to prevent it from running amok and wreaking havoc. In that blessing, there is a hint to On and his wife. Like the Midrash tells us, Rashis Oni. Rashis Oni. Rashis means the first of. That's a hint to his wife. Which wife? The wife of On. She showed us how to navigate category 3 flaws. And with wisdom, indeed, she built her house. What a powerful idea. Let's get to this week's dilemma. The dilemma. The sinner. If we're not perfect, if we have that unfortunate news that we learned from the Torch Center in Houston, Texas, don't shoot the messenger. You have some flaws. You're not perfect. Some people feel like they're not worthy. I'm a sinner. I have so many flaws and shortcomings. Category 1, 2, and 3. How can I pray? How can I come before God Almighty and make my case and entreat Him to help me and to ask for my needs and for the things that I want? Some people feel unworthy. What to do? If you feel unworthy, I'm not worthy of having God listen to my prayer. I'm certainly unworthy of having God hearken to my prayer. What to do? We learn in our Parsha how Moshe, chapter 16, verse 15, he prayed. Vayomer el Hashem, and he said to God, Al teifen el minchasam, do not turn to their offering. The Ramban explains, don't listen to their prayer. Korach was praying, Almighty God, help me overcome Moshe. The 250 collaborators were praying to God to witness the downfall of Moshe. And Moshe is doing a counter prayer that God should not listen to their prayer. Wait a minute. Korach's prayer? A prayer to achieve a terrible aim, a terrible goal. to try to destabilize the whole nation, to try to tear down Moshe and Aaron. There's no more illegitimate cause in the world. Why is Moshe worried about his prayer? We learn from this. The prayer of a sinner also works. The prayer of a sinner for a terrible cause, for a corrupt cause, also works. Prayer is always efficacious. And that's why, absent Moshe's intervention, absent Moshe's counter prayer, Korach's prayer, to commit a mutiny, to commit an insurrection, would have actually landed. Scripture tells us God is close to all those who call out to him, provided that they do so with genuine sincerity. The Talmud talks about the prayer of a thief, of a burglar who's burrowing into someone else's house to burglarize them and maybe even kill them. There's an innocent homeowner, and there's a ruthless, brutal thief, burglar. And the Talmud said, even that prayer is heard by God. If a thief's prayer is heard, if a terrible, idolatrous king like Menashe's prayer is heard, if Korach's prayer would have been heard absent Moshe's counter prayer, our prayer, when we are sincere, when we are wholehearted, will also be heard. I appreciate your attention to this matter. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope we all have a wonderful rest of our week. It should be, please God, the beginning of a golden age. You think about how much our people went through in the last year and a half. And again, we know nothing, and we're not going to prophesy. I always joke that I work for a non-profit organization. We don't know anything about prophets and prophecy. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't even know about prophet spelled the other way around, right? Truly non-profit. torchweb.org to remedy that. Links in the description. But we don't know where things are heading. But from what it seems to us, it seems like we're on the precipice of a golden age. Our people are on the precipice of a golden age. Again, a lot of people have made predictions that seem foolish in retrospect. We don't know anything. But if you look at what we can observe, how many different menaces, how many different existential threats seem to have been neutralized. We know that in every generation, someone's rising up against us to try to destroy us. And the Almighty saves us. It seems like the Almighty has been saving us from all these terrible villains. And we hope and pray, and now that we know that our prayer can land, even if we're not worthy, even if we feel unworthy, we hope and pray that indeed only goodness and only blessing and only success comes to our people and our land. And we should hear good news from the Holy Land and from our brethren. Everyone have a wonderful day, a fantastic and splendid week, a magnificent, terrific, meaningful, powerful, uplifting Shabbos upcoming. And please God, with the help of the Almighty, we'll talk again next week. And as always, my email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.